There seems to be a new selling point for Joe Biden in the media, and that is vote for Biden or we'll burn your house down. It's really becoming the message that if you don't vote for Biden, expect more riots. That's really becoming the message that a lot of people in the media are starting to put out there. So we have this from the Federalist, which is I think it's a pretty well written article called "It Votes for Biden or Else It Gets the Riots Again." It's hilarious. So threats of left-wing political violence if President Trump is reelected have gone from subtext to plain text. Yes, they are saying the quiet thing loudly now. And it's kind of funny because we always talk about Trump and how he always says the loud thing quietly and the quiet thing loudly. Well, it looks like they are trying in their best effort to out-Trump Trump. Unfortunately, their message is one of chaos and destruction, so I'm not sure it's going to have quite the same selling advantage that Trump's methodology has. So let's take a look at this article from Nathaniel Blake. The quiet part is becoming very loud. Threats of left-wing political violence if President Trump is reelected have gone from subtext to the plain text. Writing at The Atlantic, Shadi Hamid warns of mass unrest and political violence across American cities if Trump wins. The Democrats are embracing their inner movie villain. It votes for Biden or it gets the riots again. And yes, and I don't think this is, I feel like I've seen this from a number of outlets now, talking about how if Trump wins, you can expect more riots. And we've been hearing about how, what was it? I'm trying to recall the article that I was reading the other day about how it would only a landslide victory for Biden would keep the left from rioting again. So even if it was a close election that Biden barely won, they would still riot. I forget exactly what it was, but so let's get back to the article. Not that the rioting and related violence have stopped, from the attempted assassination of cops in Los Angeles to mostly peaceful protests in New York. The mayhem continues, but it is less intense than it was earlier this summer. Well, yeah, that's because Trump has made plenty of moves to help quell the riots. One of the things that he did was he deputized the state police in Oregon. So now, before, the local police were arresting these people, taking them to jail, and then the district attorney was just saying, "Oh, you were out rioting? Well, I hope you had fun. I don't know what you're doing here in my courtroom. Get on out of here and get back at it, boy. Have yourself a good time." So Trump went ahead and deputized the state police. Now, if you get arrested by the state police, you can be handed off to the feds for federal charges. And we also heard that Attorney General William Barr is actually suggesting or pushing, I don't know how firmly he's pushing for this or whether it's just a suggestion, that they get charged with sedition, which I think would be a very, very wise move, because they are committing sedition. They are trying to overthrow the government. You look at their riots, they're talking about death to America. They're talking about burn the whole thing to the ground. They're waving communist flags, which are absolutely antithetical to the American principle, to the American dream, to the American founding, everything that we stand for. So it is a little bit less intense now because the feds are cracking down. And we saw a story earlier. There's two attorneys, the two lawyers in New York that got arrested for throwing Molotov cocktails at a police vehicle are looking at life in prison. And you know what? I hope they get it. I hope they get it. I'm not normally a fan of, making an example out of people, but I don't even want this to be a case of making an example out of people. I think that everybody who commits those crimes should be locked away. See you later. You are an anti-American buffoon who went out and caused chaos and violence in the streets at the cost to your fellow citizens, to your neighbors. So, no sympathy for them. None whatsoever. And they're going to learn hard in prison. Man, when these Antifa people go to prison, Sorry, I'm going to get myself banned from YouTube if I continue that sentence. So use your own imagination, and I think you can figure out where I'm going. So now, prominent outlets of establishment liberalism are warning that the destruction can and will be turned up if the nation votes incorrectly. And we all know this is going to happen. And the truth is, it's likely going to happen either way. I mean, it might not happen if Biden wins outright in a landslide, which we know isn't going to happen. Because the left believes that Biden is just a weak person they can walk all over. And they know that they have Kamala Harris, who is a far leftist, who will really be running the organization. I mean, just the other day, Kamala Harris was talking about the Biden-Harris campaign and talking about a Harris administration with Joe Biden as president. So we all know that Kamala Harris, who is a far leftist, is really going to be the one running the show. And so even still, though, she has a track record of heavy policing and law enforcement that is also likely to turn off a lot of the far left. So I don't know whether that's going to be good enough. So we'll have to see. But the political extortion is not even hidden, with the Atlantic's Hamid writing that a Trump win is the outcome most likely to undermine faith in democracy, resulting in more of the social unrest and street battles that cities including Portland, Oregon, and Seattle have seen in recent months. Now, that is absolutely absurd, to think that Trump winning is the outcome most likely to undermine faith in democracy, because we know that all the polls are lies or they're dead wrong. I mean, you can just take a temperature of the populace and tell that everything is very, very pro-Trump right now. And you just look at the enthusiasm gaps. It would be an absolute undermining of the faith of democracy if Joe Biden was somehow able to pull off a win, especially after the debates, if they happen. I still think Joe Biden is probably going to find a way to weasel his way out of ever debating Donald Trump. But I've not met anybody who thinks Joe Biden can get the job done that actually believes in him. I know people that will hold their breath and vote for him, but if you have to hold your breath and vote for your candidate versus the Trump base that is just will walk over burning coals to vote for Donald Trump, I think it would absolutely undermine faith in democracy if Biden wins, especially after we're seeing all that they're doing to steal the election with mail-in votes. I mean, Fauci and Birx have said that we can vote in person. So why are we not doing it? We've seen the articles of Democrat operatives who have come out and admitted that mail-in voting is more so the rule than the exception, or fraud is more the rule than the exception when it comes to mail-in voting. So I think, if anything, a Biden win is going to undermine faith in democracy. Sorry, I was trying to hold that in. Didn't work. All right, so for this reason, strictly law and order Republicans who have responded in dismay to scenes of rioting and looting have an interest in Biden winning. A stereotypical mob line such as "nice place you got there, shame if anything would happen to it" is subtle in comparison. And he's absolutely right. I mean, they're outright saying it: vote for us, or we're bringing the mob out on you. Even if we accept that Hamid is truly worried about his predictions and we absolve him of threatening the nation with riots if we vote the wrong way, the menace of his article is unmistakable. Whether Hamid is personally culpable in his role as a messenger is irrelevant. Even in decline, The Atlantic represents establishment liberalism. If it is publishing predictions of mass political violence from the left, then the Democratic mainstream is willing to countenance political violence if it doesn't get its way. And that's exactly what they're doing. We've seen the left covering for the violence all summer long, ever since George Floyd. And, I mean, I don't think you would even be too far-fetched to say that the Democrats were in part organizing it, because we saw how it all happened. George Floyd died, and then the next day there were bricks all over cities ready for rioters to start smashing things up. You're going to tell me you didn't have that planned? They were just waiting for that starter gun and then off to the races. I used that same line in a video yesterday, I think. So for the threat of political violence to be credible, the Democrats have to seem likely to resort to it if they lose. See, this is one angle that the author of this article takes that I disagree with, because what I think is happening is the Democrats are wielding a weapon that they have no control over. So whether we actually see political violence come November, I don't think the Democrats are really going to have any say whatsoever in what the far left does. This takes under the assumption that the far left are really Biden supporters. No, they're actually anti-Americans. Or they're anti-American communists, essentially, is what they are. They're anti-American communists. And so no matter who wins, I think we're going to see violence from the far left after the election, because to them it's not about who wins the election, it's about burning the entire system to the ground. So this is an ugly look for a political party, and Hamid's article therefore provides an extensive indictment of Democrats. Whether intentionally or not, Hamid has laid out why Democrats should be kept far from political power. Yes, they should be kept far from political power just by the whole idea. I mean, we heard Hillary Clinton talk about how there will be no return to civility until essentially Trump is out of office. We've heard them talk about how, we've seen Kamala Harris fundraising to get violent rapists out of jail. And we actually saw that one of them was a child rapist, and Kamala Harris was fundraising for their bail. So they are absolutely willing to court these insane lunatics, these communists, if it means bolstering their power. Because they know that when it comes down to it, these rioters are the useful idiots, and the Kamala Harrises of the world are the opportunists. They're going to cement their power, and then Kamala Harris is going to turn around and execute all of these rioters once they're all of a sudden a threat to her. I guarantee you, day one, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden get into office, and she is going to lay down the hammer on these people. Because it's okay when they're doing this for her political opposition, but if they come out and do it under her administration, no, she's going to lay down the rule of law, and she's going to have the media to cover her for it. She's going to do all the things that people on the right have wanted Trump to do, but Trump hasn't been able to do because the optics, because of the media, would be so terrible. So they appear detached from reality, unwilling to accept election results, let alone engage in self-examination about why they lost. Yeah, they have... just watch Hillary Clinton's excuse tour. Book tour. She was just closing her eyes and throwing a dart at words on the board, and yep, there's another reason why I lost. No, it was because you were a terrible, terrible candidate, Hillary. Hamid writes that liberals have had enough trouble accepting the results of the 2016 election. In some sense, they never really came to terms with it. I think in every sense, they never came to terms with it. They have never come to terms with the fact that they did not get to continue the Obama plan all through Hillary. And I do think that there was a 16-year plan to dismantle America, and we saw 8 years of it go down under Obama, and Hillary was going to be the one that finished it off. And I think that's why they have essentially accelerated the plan under Trump, trying to make Trump look bad. It's backfiring, and that's why I don't think that there's any chance that Biden can win unless they steal the election, which they seem to be doing brazenly. So a second surprise Trump victory might push them over the edge. A second Trump victory would not be a surprise. As he notes, they never really accepted the results in 2016. Shocked by Trump's victory, Democrats embrace conspiracy theories to explain it. Meanwhile, they like to condemn all of the right for everything we say is a conspiracy theory, even if we have the cold, hard proof. Even we could point to them holding a smoking gun and say, they did it. And they'd say, what are you talking about? That's a conspiracy theory. Why would I shoot them? Why would I shoot anyone? I don't know. The Russian obsession was not just an effort to kneecap Trump's administration. It also gave Democrats a palatable reason for why they had won. Many on the left found it easier to believe that Trump had cheated his way into the White House than to accept that he had actually beaten them. It also gave them a way to accuse the opposition of exactly what they were doing. They were the ones engaged in everything they've accused Trump of. They basically committed crimes and then said, Trump did it. It was Trump. Impeach him. That's been the Democrat playbook. So this collective denial, it also obviated the need to understand Trump voters, let alone try to appeal to them. I also don't know that it... yes, it did obviate the need to understand Trump voters, but I don't think that understanding Trump voters was ever what any of them wanted. And appealing to them was never what they wanted, because to appeal to... they've been moving left all of this time. And the election of Trump my left is your right. Sorry, guys. They've been moving left this entire time. And to appeal to Trump would mean it would stop their leftward progression and force them to come back right to the center a little bit again. And that is absolutely not what the establishment wants. These are globalists. They have an agenda. And like I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll continue to say it, China is the model. So I think it obfuscated the need for them to have to come back to the center because they were going to continue to progress left. They would be dismissed as a bunch of suckers and bigots rather than addressed as rational actors with legitimate reasons to support Trump. Likewise, viewing Trump's 2016 victory as an illegitimate fluke encouraged Democrats to complain about it. Really? Democrats have been complaining about the Trump presidency? Haven't heard that. That's all they do. Rather than effectively compete within... I'm sorry. I jumped the gun on that. So... Likewise, viewing Trump's presidency as an illegitimate fluke encouraged Democrats to complain about rather than effectively compete within the Electoral College. Hamid appears to join his condemnation of America's presidential electoral system as an anti-democratic anomaly. Now, here's the thing. We are not a democracy. The founders never wanted us to be a democracy. We wanted it to be weighted so that different regions could not hold, so population centers could not hold complete sway over rural areas because they have very different needs, and they both are very important parts of our functioning country. You know, the city slicker Democrats like to just think of people that are rural as backwoods redneck hillbillies that provide nothing to America as they sit there and eat a meal farmed by those same backwoods redneck hillbillies. You know, it's absolute narcissism. It's narcissism. But as Charles Cook recently pointed out in the National Review, many other countries eschew direct popular votes. Okay, I don't care what other countries do. We're going to skip the part about other countries. So the framers of our Constitution rightly feared mob rule, and the Electoral College was designed to preclude it in the selection of our presidents. Yes, because a direct democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. Wonder how that's going to turn out. The Democrats are threatening mob violence over the Electoral College shows that it is working as intended by keeping power away from the mob and forcing candidates to appeal to voters of various regions and factions. Yes, and that's the absolute point. And it tries to keep things in the center. The Electoral College, you know, they need the popular vote in order to have this far leftist thing because they need population centers to grow and be monolithically left-wing in order to do that. But you need to be able to. I'm sorry, I lost my train. I didn't lose my train of thought there. I was trying to figure out exactly what I was trying to say. If the majority of the vote lies in the cities, they no longer have to then appeal to rural people and other places, you know, industrial areas and things like that. In truth, Democrats' complaints are less about principled constitutional theory and more about political opportunism. Oh, yeah, I can guarantee you that if the shoe was on the other foot and the Republicans won the popular vote and they won the Electoral College, they would be singing the praises of the Electoral College. They were quite pleased with the Electoral College back when they thought they had a blue wall that would favor them forever in states like Pennsylvania. But they lost that because they took it for granted. Likewise, the threats of mob violence that the Atlantic is publishing may be little more than a desperate attempt at political jiu-jitsu. The riots have become a problem for Democrats who, along with their media allies, spent months downplaying and excusing the violence and conflating rioters with genuinely peaceful protesters. Yeah, it's, like I said, they're wielding a weapon with which they don't have the power to control. They picked it up and then they realized, Democrats are like a little 5'1" woman who weighs 95 pounds soaking wet holding a 50 cal Desert Eagle. That's them. That's them. They're the 5'1", 95 pound woman, and the violent leftist rioters are the 50 caliber Desert Eagle. They might be able to pull that trigger, but it's gonna break their wrists when they do. But the damage is impossible to deny, and Trump is cudgeling Democrats with it. As he points out, the unrest, destruction, and violence are overwhelmingly caused by left-wing radicals, and the far worst of it is concentrated in cities and states controlled by Democrats, many of whom have ostentatiously rejected offers for federal help. Yet we've even heard that Bill Barr was looking into pressing charges against Mayor, was it Jenny Durkins in Seattle for her role in allowing CHOP to happen, or Chaz, whatever you want to call it, that communist autonomous zone that she said was going to be a summer of love. Yeah, meanwhile, you had Chaz police, or security, whatever they called themselves, fire 300 rounds into a vehicle, killing a teenage kid. Yeah, good job. I think we should arrest Mayor Jenny Durkins, or whatever her name is. So perhaps the Democrats have decided that perhaps the Democrats have decided that when your voters give you riots, make the riots into a political threat. Of course, the threat only works if voters believe that the Democrats are really crazy enough to burn it all down if Trump loses. I do, and I don't really think it's entirely just Democrats. It's the establishment. It's the establishment powers that Trump threatens so gravely, so existentially. Now, that's why we have a lot of it's going to be the Never-Trumpers, too. You know, the Never-Trump Republicans, who are part of this establishment. Now, of course, they're likely just kind of, I think there's a lot of Republicans in the establishment that are just sitting on their hands quietly, trying to just not be seen. You know, they might be working behind the scenes to help Democrats, but they won't say it out loud because they know that all of the Republican force is behind Trump at this point. So, do I think that the Democrats would be crazy enough? I mean, sure, I do. But I also don't think it's really up to Democrats because, again, this is a weapon too powerful for them to wield that they have unleashed, and it has grown beyond Democrat control. But that itself is a problem for Democrats. Why would voters want to give more power to people who are that crazy? Exactly. These people are lunatics. The Democrats are power-crazed lunatics. Fortunately, Democrats' political threats of violence may be empty. Doesn't matter because, again, they don't have the power to wield it, even if they mean them. Some may riot, but how far will they go? After all, if President Trump is reelected, he will have the mandate to use federal power to restore order, despite the objections of local Democratic officials who allow and encourage the riots. Democrats are trying to take America hostage, but even if they are willing to pull the trigger, the gun they are holding to the nation's head may not be loaded. I don't like the way this ended. I think it was a really good article. I think its final conclusion, though, misses the point. It misses the point that the gun is loaded. It's just too large for the Democrats to wield, and it could, you know, it's hair triggered too. They might flinch, and that flinch causes, you know, that analogy's going off the rails. Sorry, guys. I've already recorded 5 videos today, so I'm kind of at the end of my mental endurance here. So, anyways, guys, that's the article, and I do think that we are going to see, if Trump wins, they are going to burn the country, and I think that's one of the things that this doesn't really, they say crazy enough to burn it all down, but I don't think that they realize burn it all down is going to be more literal than figurative, because, you know, we've seen the fires, we've seen a lot of the fires being started already here in Oregon and California, out on the West Coast. And I think a lot of it represents this 1969 talk by G. Edward Griffin. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, where he talks about how burning the countryside, burning the cities, burning all the land in between, it's going to be used to spread out first responders so that they can pick them off one at a time. Or so that it, you know, even if it's not to pick off the first responders, the police and firefighters, it will be to keep them busy while they cause other havoc. So I think that if Trump wins, we absolutely are going to see massive violence on the left. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be the Democrats that are pulling that trigger, because I don't think that they can actually, I don't think they have the power. They're the face, but they're not the operation. The operation are these far left, highly funded agitators and organizers. And I think if the Democrats try to reel them in, they're going to say, no, you either burn America to the ground with us, or we burn your house down too. We've already seen that. I mean, they've gone after Mayor Ted Wheeler. They tried to set Mayor Ted Wheeler, who marched with the Black Lives Matter rioters. They went and tried to burn his apartment building down. These people, so the Democrats may try to delay the inevitable by supporting these people, but eventually they're going to turn on them too, and they know it. Or at least they should know it by now. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Go ahead and hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this video if you haven't already. And also, if you haven't already followed me on other social media platforms, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler at Ram Thorburn. Also, if you would like to contribute to the channel and help me up my game and get better equipment here, there are links to my Subscribe Star, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.